Another guy that tells it the way it is Arash Madani, despite people not wanting to hear it. And we're definitely going to be talking Blue Jays with our guy Arash. But there he is. How you doing, man? Where are you joining us from today?
Brother, I am in downtown Toronto. I'm actually hosting Tim and Friends with McAuliffe later today. Norm Powell and Gary Trent Jr. are among our guests. We'll be talking a little hoops coming up a little later tonight.
Going to re-examine the trade, are you?
I don't know about that, but just kind of checking in with both of them, so to speak. I don't know, Roddy, can you really re-examine a trade a month into it? 5 weeks into it.
Well, especially when one's not even playing. But I will tell you, Gary Trent Jr. looks great in that leopard tuxedo with no shirt.
Yes.
You and I couldn't get away with it.
He looked in the Blue Jay uniform with his name on the back. That wasn't bad either.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to come around on all of these Toronto sports in a moment. But CFL-wise, you were kind of ahead of the curve with the reporting yesterday, what's going down. What's your take 24 hours later that we now have a targeted kickoff date of August 5th in the CFL?
Yeah, I think it's a hopeful date. I think that's what August 5th is, that this is what the CFL, where they hope to be. Roddy, I didn't see a schedule yesterday. I don't think anybody saw a schedule yesterday. I heard from people who, from different teams, they're hopeful the second week of July is when they can start training camp. They're hopeful that by the end of June, they'll have players from the U.S. and their globals in their city. But nothing's concrete, nothing's definitive, nothing's known. Matter of fact, mid-June is when we're really going to know if this is even going to happen or not for August the 5th as an opening day. And I've been in touch with people from different teams around the league. Rod, if you're going to get a season off the ground, what do you need? You need to have training camp. In order to have training camp, you got to book flights, you got to book hotels, you got to book fields, you got to book meals. Nobody's going through with that. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of teams are hesitant to do that until at least June when they know where the lay of the land is. So I think all yesterday was hope, a message to the fans of we're not giving up, we're not throwing in the towel. Please buy some tickets because we've had next to no revenue for the last 18 months. And we'll check back in with you in 7 weeks to let you know where things stand.
And we'll do the same. I got to say this. When's the last time you got as much reaction as you did from your appearance on the XFL Markcast? People are writing in about it like crazy. And your comment about there's nothing there in the XFL but moldy uniforms and some helmets. Richard Petty tweeted it, which is awesome. People are sending me that going, what does this mean? Why is Petty doing this? The founder, basically, of MLSE. Why are people raging about your interview in a good way on the XFL Markcast?
I don't know, Rod. I was just very honest. I just said, and God bless those guys, because they care about their twice failed league and they care about the figment of the imagination of what the XFL is right now. But they came to me that Taylor Heineke is and PJ Walker is what the XFL is. So I'm like, man, how about Doug Flutie and Jeff Garcia and Cameron Wake and Warren Moon? Like on and on we can go about what the Canadian Football League has been. They're just, it's a good question why people were so interested about it. Maybe it was because there was actual honesty and coming at them like I meant it.
Yeah. Well, kudos for you, but that's kind of the hallmark of your thing. So enough on that. I appreciate your take on the CFL. So I'm still trying to figure out how you watch more than one game at a time. I'm checking in on Canada's team last night, the Golden Knights. That was my priority viewing. And then the Oilers and Habs, and then the Blue Jays. And every time I dropped in on the Blue Jays, they were talking about George Springer. It was awesome. They're like, well, they might have him Thursday. Well, they're off today. Might have him Friday, maybe Sunday, at the very latest Tuesday. And what's he going to mean to this lineup when he's eventually in, Arash?
Well, one thing about the Springer why nobody seems to know is yesterday pregame, we had a chance to visit with Charlie Montoyo. And you asked the manager, okay, when is your $150 million player going to come? He said, well, George is day to day. And he said, I don't want to speculate. Like, okay. But then he said, if I were to guess, it could be Friday, it could be Sunday, but he's day to day and I just don't. So that's what you get. That's why everything's up in the air. Rod, you get one of the best players in baseball. You get the guy who's going to set the table for you at the top of the lineup. You get a former World Series MVP who's been there and done that. You get a player at the prime of their career. You're also going to get a player who's coming off an injury, whose timing isn't down. He hasn't really swung a bat in a major league game, a real major league game, since the playoffs last October. And you're going to get, even though he's a vet, even though he's been there and done that, and he's very accomplished, you're going to get a vet who's going to try and do too much. Roddy, how often have we seen in pro sports across the board when a free agent moves teams, goes to a new franchise with a big contract, right away wants to show that they made the right decision, I'm the man. We're going to get a little bit of that from George Springer along the way. But you're going to get yourself a ball player. You're going to get yourself a face of the franchise eventually, whenever he returns, Friday, Sunday, next week, whenever.
Well, I'll tell you what, everything happens for a reason, and he's just resting now. He's recouping, I guess, from the injury, the quad injury, and we'll see where they go from there. But what about the criticism last night from Kevin Biggio at the hot corner, booting a couple of balls? I thought he responded very well. I mean, do people forget that Vladdy was moved from there because it wasn't working? How are you on the Jays' infield play?
Well, they've struggled. There's no question the opening month of the season. Bichette's kicking the ball around. Biggio's made the transition to a new position. He told me last year third base is where he feels most comfortable. And, every day in spring training, he was there first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock to meet Louis Rivera to work on it. But it's a work in progress. Roddy, these things are going to take time for a young team. And as I've told you repeatedly, 2022 is when they become a contender. So they have to find out exactly what these guys can do and just be patient with them. If you, in any sport, if you have somebody change positions, if you ask an offensive lineman to become a pass rusher, if you ask a point guard to become a small forward, if you ask basically somebody who plays all over the field to end up being an everyday third baseman, there are going to be some growing pains. Now, the Biggio situation, I mean, part of it was because it was a ground ball that could have ended the inning, and then suddenly it could have led to a lot more damage, but then he validated himself and vindicated himself with another ground ball to third that he threw across the diamond to get Vlad. There are going to be speed bumps and hiccups along the way. There are going to be some issues for Biggio this year and for Bichette this year. You hope they get him out of the way in April and May if you're a Blue Jay fan. But this is a big evaluation year for both of them.
We've had these chats for years, and I was always so rider focused, of course. I was really relying on you for my Blue Jays info because I wasn't watching the games. And now I am. And the main thing here is these guys are hella fun to watch. They just split off the division leaders. They've beaten the Yankees twice in series, right? Like, you always
Roddy,
say,
how fun's that?
What's my point? You're always saying it's early. Yes, but I'm enjoying the ride. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
It's funny with Guerrero. The light went on for him last year, and he showed up to summer training camp after the COVID break, layoff, whatever you want to call it. And he's lost like 45 pounds since then, but he made a commitment then that I'm going to turn things around. And I mean, he was the number one prospect in AAA. He has this magical swing. But it took like 3 years of being a professional for him to understand what it takes to be a pro. It's not just standing up there every day and taking hacks in the cage and then, going into a game. It's all your pregame preparation. It's the work you put in on your body. It's the film study that goes along with it. It's taking ground balls. It's being ready. And he's taken those steps, and you're starting to see what he could and can be. And so that's what's made this fun to watch, is that Vlad's, again, it's only a month in. Roddy, I don't know about you, man, but from my seat, Vladdy looks like superstar in the making.
No, and so does Bo. But I can't believe how it's all in his trunk that he's lost that weight. Like, his belt size must have gone from 44 down to 36. But Bo looks great, too. I turned to Cindy last night. I said, Bo's flow. They got something going, man. Like Sammy Cosentino, the whitest teeth in show business, was on here last week, and he said these Jays remind him of the late 90s Blue Jays, which unfortunately didn't really go on to do anything. But does this group remind you of any other eras of prior Blue Jays incarnations?
It's a good question. Nothing pops off the page to me just because what makes this group interesting, Rod, is that they all came up together. Through the minor leagues, Biggio, Guerrero, Bichette, the big three. One thing that Bout told us the other day is that after an at-bat, Vlad will come over to him and tell him what he saw from the pitcher and from Bo, if he was getting out of his approach or anything like that at the plate. And I asked Bo, I said, can anybody do that? And he said, John Schneider, who was their manager all the way up, my dad, Biggio, and Vlad, people who have been there from the beginning, can do that. These guys actually care about one another. Danny Jansen came up with them. So this nucleus that, they're all freshmen, and now they're juniors. They're not quite seniors. And the Blue Jays are hoping by the time they're redshirt fifth-year seniors, that they could be knocking on the door to something.
Yeah, and I just feel like we all watched it, so we all feel part of it ourselves, too, as Canadians.
Yeah.
Right? We've been following the ride, which makes you, whatever it is, whether that's marketing or whatever, we kind of feel like we've had a front row seat, and kudos to you that Sportsnet has the games. Hey, NFL, 1 week from today is round one. Yeah?
Yeah, just one last thing. Here's the other thing that makes this group interesting. Their last names.
Yes.
Kevin Bishop, son of a Hall of Famer. Bo Bichette, Dante Kudrake. In this country, what Vladimir Guerrero represented with the Expos, who's a cult hero, no batting gloves, swinging balls in the dirt and still hitting them 1,000 feet. So there's almost like this connection to the old Expos. There's a connection to the names that you are familiar with, and you're just excited to see what they can become.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And my point, by the way, is will there be any play in your neck of the woods on the NFL draft, which round one's 1 week from tonight?
It's funny you asked that, Rod. On Monday, just got confirmation today, I'm going to do a Chalk Talk X's and O's film session with Jordan Palmer. Jordan is a quarterback consultant who has worked with Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson and Kyle Allen and a bunch of different quarterbacks. For the last 2.5 months, Roddy, he has worked every day with the one and only Trevor Lawrence.
Nice.
It was Jordan Palmer who went to Clemson and orchestrated Lawrence's pro day, and we're going to go into the film room with Palmer, who knows Lawrence's mechanics and his nuances inside and out. We're also going to talk about Zach Wilson. But the player in this draft, Rod, that I am so pumped to see at the pro level, who to me is an absolute matchup nightmare, is Kyle Pitts, who is listed as a tight end from the University of Florida. You could put him wide, slot, tight end, shoot, running back, whatever. I can't remember a more dynamic, explosive, skilled position player coming out of college in a long time, maybe in a generation. And I think he's going to be dynamite at the pro level if he's used right in an offense.
I'd be interested to hear Mr. Palmer's comments on Trevor Lawrence's comments about not having a chip on his shoulder, and he's not motivated every day by a Super Bowl. That's just a kid being a kid. When you say he's just being honest.
You want, Roddy, speaking of honest, you know what I'm tired of? Chip on my shoulder. Like, come on. How tired is that? How often do we hear that? Why is there a chip on your shoulder? Like one guy that comes to mind is Marcus Stroman. I remember thinking to myself, Marcus, your life has not been that difficult. You grew up in a middle-class family. You went to a private university, Duke, on a full scholarship. You were a first-round pick. You got a 7-figure signing bonus. Where's the adversity been? Where's this chip on your shoulder? Like, we just keep hearing about this all the time. Let's just cool it. Okay, a few coaches didn't think you could play. If that gave you motivation, great. But it seems like if somebody scowls at an athlete these days, that gives them a chip on their shoulder, and that's motivated them. How about be motivated to win? How about be motivated to lift a trophy? How about be motivated to sign a big contract and get yourself paid?
Yeah, he's Trevor Lawrence is motivated enough. It comes from within. That's why he's number one projected in the draft. Okay, great chat, my man. Thanks. Be you. We'll be watching later today for Tim and Friends.
Appreciate you, Roddy.
Same to you. Sportsnet's Arash Madani on Tim and Friends later on today.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.